Welcome back, McFly subscribers. We're starting a new series for the month of December on medium-sized streamers. And we're starting off this series with the very popular Deceiver fly. This pattern works for such a wide range of fish, from freshwater species like predatory trout and bass, to saltwater species, both inshore and offshore. Alright, well, enough talk for me, as I'm sure you all want to get started tying right away. But first, in case you haven't seen this channel before, this is McFly Angler.
Starts now.
Okay, let's start tying. Place the hook securely in your vise. For a hook, I'm using Risen's O'Shaughnessy hooks, and these are a size 2, even though you can't see it here. These hooks are a long shank and gradual bend hook that uses a very heavy stainless wire, which means it'll be strong enough to bring in most any fish that you can hook. We will also need some thread, and today I'm using Vivas 140 power thread in white. This is a very strong and flat thread. You can use something finer if you wish, but I really like using the 140 denier for this fly. Start your thread about a hook eye length back from the hook eye and snip off the waist. Then bring your thread down to the start of the hook bend, and then come back up a couple wraps. Now we need some hackle for the tail, and I have this strung Chinese saddle hackle, which is great for this fly, and rather inexpensive as well. Now there are other options though if you wish. These whiting streamer packs could work. Similarly, these bugger packs could also work, but the tips are more pointed rather than rounded like the streamer packs. So use those if you want more of a pointed look. A saddle patch like this could also work, and you could use whatever colors you want, but plain white is most common. Wet fly hackle is also usable, however the tips are more rounded, and the hackle is a bit shorter, so it's better for smaller streamers. But let's prepare the feather for the tail. Pull 3 feathers off the swatch or saddle, and make sure that the tips are roughly aligned. Now you could tie these in so that they're all aligned the same direction, but I like these tails to be a bit more splayed out. So simply twisting the feathers like this will make them less aligned, and give this a more natural look to them. Measure out this tail to be about 2 times the hook shank length, and then cut the feathers at that measurement and tie them in with some tight wraps. And then clean up the shank as best as you can. Now it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay, as the excess feathers sticking out will be fixed later. Now for some flash. 3 strands of crystal flash will work great. Use whatever color you wish. Tie in the flash on the side of the tail so the flash extends just shy of the tail end. And then wrap the forward facing strands rearward and tie them in on the other side, and cut that side to the same length. Now for some flashaboo. And I have this really pretty mirage flash, but regular pearl works fine as well. Cut off 4 to 6 strands, and wetting them will help keep them together. Tie them in on top of the tail so they extend slightly past the tail end, and then clip off the waist. Wetting them will keep them together on your tying bench for the next fly. Now for some body wrap. These are most commonly tied with holographic braid like this in either pearl or silver, but saltwater flashaboo will also work, and even these spooled tinsel like this as well. A piece this long should tie 2 to 3 of these flies. Tie this in back to the tail of the fly, and then bring your thread up to the initial tie-in spot. Now start wrapping the material around the hook shank with touching wraps, covering all your thread wraps. When you reach the thread, then capture the material and cut off the waist. Then clean it up with a couple wraps. Wind your thread up to the hook eye and back down to about a hook eye width back to form a thread base. Now for some bucktail. You will want 2 colors. Almost always white, and then another darker color. In this case I have chartreuse here, but you can tie these in whatever color you find bucktail, which is pretty vast. And here are a few examples. Now most flies want fur from the tip of the bucktail, as it will flare a little less and the fiber is a bit longer. But you can select some further down this fly, just not all the way to the base, as a little flare on this fly is okay, and we really don't need the fibers too long. Snip off a small amount, we really don't need too much, and then pinch the tips of the fiber and pull out the shorter fibers. Now hold the base of the fibers tight and pull the extra long fibers out, and you can either toss those or just replace them back into the stack so they're a little bit shorter. If you roll the fibers a little in your fingers, you can get them to compress a bit, which will be easier to tie in. Okay, we want to measure this out so it extends a half a hook shank length back from the hook bend, and then transfer that measurement to your other hand, and cut this off at an angle. However, I find it's easier to cut it at this angle instead, but it's up to you. Place this on the side of the hook, angling slightly down, and it helps to have a rotary vise so you can turn the fly. I find if I make 2 loose wraps over the fiber, I can then pull the fiber back and out of the way of the hook eye. Okay, let's make a few more tight wraps up to the hook eye, and then back down to hold this tight and clean up the head. Now measure out another bit of fur about the same thickness and the same length, and tie it in on the other side the same way. Now push the clumps around with your thumb to spread them out and evenly distribute the bottom portion of the fly, trying to keep everything on the bottom half, although some will be sticking above, and that's okay. Now let's take a clump of the darker bucktail, about double the thickness of the white, and prepare this to tie in the same way by pulling out the shorter and extra long fibers. Then measure this to be a bit longer than the white fibers, maybe extending about halfway down the tail. Cut at an angle and tie in the same way, but leave this on top of the fly like so. Use your thumb again to evenly distribute the fibers across the top of the hook, and then turn your fly upside down. Now we need some red crystal flash for the gills. Pull out 5 to 6 strands and cut them free from the hank. Now wrap this around the thread and use the thread to drop it directly on the underside of the fly like so. Then wrap back up on it, but do not let go of the flash. Pull it up and cut it a little shy of the hook point. Then push it around with your thumb, and then start wrapping up and down the head of the fly to build a large and tapered head. Now if you spin your bobbin counterclockwise, it will uncord the thread and flatten it out, making the wraps very smooth. Now whip finish the fly from back to front and cut off the waist. Now many people grab some 3D eyes at this point and glue them on, but you can just use a Sharpie to draw in the eyes. You can use a fat end like this, but if your Sharpie has a thinner marker, this will help keep the ink from bleeding into the thread. Make little dots on both sides of the head, and then let's cement the head. I really like bone dry resin from Solarez for this, as it has a handy paintbrush in the cap for easy application. Just paint a little around the head, and then cure it with your UV light while spinning the fly. And now the fly will be super durable, and this resin leaves a nice shiny and professional finish also. Okay, so I have a few fibers sticking out covering the hook eye, and you can use a lighter to burn these fibers, and they will get out of the way, making it easier to tie in on your line. Just don't let the flame touch anything but the head there, or the whole thing will go up in flames, so be careful when doing this. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it definitely helped. Well, there we have it, the finished Deceiver fly. These were originally created by the late Lefty Kreh, a legend in fly fishing. He created this pattern in the 50s to fish for striped bass, but these soon gained popularity and became a staple in many different conditions, from fishing predatory trout to largemouth bass in freshwater, to even saltwater fishermen for both inshore and offshore species. These move so wonderfully in the water, yet rarely foul on the hook when tied correctly. They represent fleeing baitfish very well when stripped quickly, but the material used flows very nicely even without much movement. And when you stall the fly, it sinks slowly and evenly, making a slow or jerk pause retrieve very effective as well. There are not many other flies out there that are such a large and wide profile, yet are still very light and easy to cast. These are also fairly easy and quick to tie once you get the hang of them, making these one of the best medium to large streamers ever created. If you haven't tried tying them before, or possibly not even fished them before, I highly recommend trying them out when fish are eating large baitfish. So I wanted to show you all a few different colors as well. This one here I did an olive version, and I used the badger color saddle hackle I showed earlier in the video. This one here I tied in pink and used the whiting soft hackle saddle. And you can see how different it makes the tail look with these rounded tips. Okay, well I believe this is a great start to this month's medium-sized streamer series, and you would do well to fill an entire box with only these streamers. However, we still have a few other notable streamers to tie. Next week I plan on tying up the sparkle minnow, an incredibly flashy streamer with lots of movement. So make sure you're subscribed and click the bell notification so you don't miss any future videos like this sparkle minnow. By the way, these all-foam fly boxes are finally available now on Amazon with free shipping. I do apologize that it took so long. I know a lot of you were asking when they will be in stock, and finally they came available. These are thin enough to fit in most chest pack pockets, yet they still have enough room to hold large streamers without compressing the material, and on both sides as well. The clasps are magnetic and very strong, And the boxes are made entirely of foam, so they float when accidentally dropped in the water. Also, with those magnetic clasps, they almost always close when they land, so you won't lose any flies or the entire box if you accidentally drop them when fishing. I can't tell you how many flies these boxes have saved me. And if you're as clumsy as I am, these are the perfect boxes for you. They also make great gifts for your fishing friends. So pick up a few while supplies last. I will link below to my Amazon storefront if you're interested in picking up these boxes. Also, don't forget to check out my sponsor, Risen Fly. They made the hooks I use today, but they also make some of the best fly rods and reels for the money I have ever used. Best off, they're offering you all a discount. So if you're in the market for a new rod or a bunch of hooks or beads, go to www.risenfly.com and type in McFly at checkout, and they'll give you 15% off of your first order with them. Okay, thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please do me a favor and click the like button. Also, please share all my videos with your fishing friends. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.